Canada is broken.
Canada's not broken.
Canada is broken. Canada's not broken. Canada is broken.
Canada is not broken.
Canada is broken.
Canadians are not broken.
Canada is broken. Canada is not broken. 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 Broken.
This is breaking news. 2 people have been shot dead following an attempted home invasion in South Glengarry. According to the police, the incident began when 3 people tried to enter the home. 2 were shot and the 3rd person ran away. Searches for the 3rd suspect were unsuccessful. These individuals did go there for a reason, did force their way into the home, and were confronted by an individual, and resulting in 2 of them being deceased and 1 on the run. The residents of the home were not hurt, but were taken into custody as part of the investigation, and a firearm was seized. Dixon said Tuesday that the 2 people taken into custody have been released unconditionally. Police said no charges have been laid. Dixon says part of the investigation is determining whether the firearm was legal. We have to investigate this to the full extent, regardless of whether this was a home invasion or anything else. I can imagine what this family was going through to have 3 people break into their home and to make a quick decision on what to do to protect your family and your children. This is the problem in Canada. We do not have stand your ground laws. And so what that means is you have to go ahead and determine the level of force to protect yourself and your family. And so he used a gun. Obviously, I don't know if he had a license. This is breaking news. But did he feel that he needed to use that gun in order to protect him and his family? That's the problem. Now, you're in a situation like this. The adrenaline is rushing. You can't think straight, and you need to make a split-second decision. It shouldn't be on the homeowner to go ahead and do that, for them to now be potentially charged as criminals in protecting their own home, their children, and their family. That's why we need reform. I believe you need stand your ground laws in Canada. The homeowners should never be the ones that are targeted with criminal charges when they're trying to protect their family and children from criminals.
We see on our own streets anti-Semitism, guided by obscene, woke ideologies that have led to an explosion in hate crimes. Hate crimes were up over 100% in Canada before October 7th. Now they're up 251%, with Jews being the principal victims of those crimes.
How many, to the RCMP, how many people do you estimate are involved in the production and distribution of fentanyl in Canada? Do you have like a ballpark estimate? Is it 1,000 people? Is it 10,000 people?
I don't have a ballpark figure on it.
You have no idea how many people could possibly be involved in the fentanyl trade in Canada?
There's a significant group, a significant number of organized crime group, but if you're asking me for a specific number, I can't give you a specific number.
How many organized crime groups are involved?
Over 4,000 organized crime groups in Canada, as assessed by the Criminal Intelligence Service of Canada.
4,000 individual organized crime groups, all with their own distinct leadership and membership?
That's correct.
A quadruple homicide is under investigation after a grisly discovery on a Saskatchewan First Nation. CTV's Donovan Mace is near the scene for us tonight. And Donovan, what can you tell us about what happened?
Yeah, a difficult and emotional day for the Carry the Kettle Nakota Nation, where police are confirming 4 people found dead under what's being called suspicious circumstances. The investigation also putting multiple nearby communities on notice as police investigated reports of a man pointing a gun at people on the Zagamea Anishinaabe First Nation, over a 40-minute drive away from the crime scene. Police say it's unknown if this incident is connected to the deaths on Carry the Kettle, but residents on Zagamea and Cowessess First Nation were all told to stay indoors as police searched for suspects. Back at Carry the Kettle, Chief Scott Deschape taking to social media saying this incident spawned from a break-in in the northern part of the community, before asking all reading to please pray for our nation and our families. Fellow File Hills Tribal Council Cowessess responding to the tragedy saying, when one of our nations are suffering, We are all impacted, and we pull together to do what is necessary to help carry the sorrow as well as pathways to a solution. Now, police are not releasing the names of the individuals involved as of now, and with this investigation ongoing, an increased police presence is expected to continue on both Carry the Kettle and Zagame and Nishinabek nations. Donovan May, CTV News, near Carry the Kettle, Nakota Nation.
Here's a tweet from Justin Trudeau. I just had a good call with President Trump. Canada's implementing our $1.3 billion border plan, reinforcing the border with new choppers, technology, and personnel, enhanced coordination with our American partners, and increased resources to stop the flow of fentanyl. Proposed tariffs will be paused for at least 30 days while we work together. You get it, guys? Those are Justin Trudeau's own words, right? Like, all we did was say 25% tariff. Then yesterday we showed you the video. Justin Trudeau was like, we're gonna tariff you guys 25%. And then what happens? It's all bullshit. They crumble and cave, and here we are.
49,000 Canadians have died of opioid overdoses in the last 9 years, with many of those deadly drug ingredients coming in over our border, through our ports, from China and Mexico. 63 of these groups have international connections to China, Mexico, and other nations. Fact. In British Columbia, police recently discovered a super lab containing enough fentanyl and materials to kill 95 million people, more than killing our entire population twice. Fact. We must secure our border to stop the guns that are killing our people. 85% of gun crime is done with illegal guns smuggled over the border. We must secure our border.
This is what police say Mexican drug cartels are slipping into Canada. $83 million worth of cocaine, destined for every corner of the country, and recently traced to a murderous cartel making inroads here.
They were prominent. I mean, if you look at what we have here right now, this is a large load.
In a new pledge, the Prime Minister announced Ottawa will list cartels as terrorists, just one of the efforts to ward off U.S. tariffs, as the Trump administration issues this fresh warning.
The Mexican drug cartels are rapidly expanding in Canada, and that's a danger.
Cartels are known to smuggle truckloads of drugs across the U.S. border and into Canada. But a recent bust in BC suggests they're also producing enough here to send abroad. At this super lab, police say the chemicals seized would have amounted to nearly 100 million doses of fentanyl.
The fact that they are here, I will say thriving, it is dangerous for sure.
Journalist Luis Najera investigated the cartels in Mexico and fled to Canada. He sees their growing influence here, with criminal groups exploiting Pacific and Atlantic ports and laundering millions.
It has been significantly increasing, of course, because of the advantages that Canada offers.
But experts wonder what help will come now, with a trail of murders left behind, including the cartel-linked shooting of an innocent Indian couple in Ontario, still unresolved.
The benefit of designating the cartels is primarily a political one in terms of appeasing Trump and signaling to our American allies that we are willing to play ball.
The public safety minister insists the move will help authorities track the cartel's money and disrupt their operations once they're listed as terrorist groups alongside ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Thomas Dagg, CBC News, Toronto.
We must deport from our country any temporary resident that is here on a permit or a visa that is carrying out violence or hate crimes on our soil.
The fentanyl coming through Canada is massive.
The U.S. president says if Canada doesn't crack down on drugs at the border, he'll invoke tariffs, crippling the economy. So the Prime Minister has promised to act, including cracking down on money laundering. According to a Canadian Police Intelligence Service, as much as $113 billion was laundered through Canada last year, much of it by the nearly 100 organized crime groups that produced fentanyl in this country.
Legislation has simply not kept up with the way this space has evolved over the last 25 years. It's just not been a priority for the government.
Experts say criminals are drawn to financial rules that are more lax compared to the U.S. There's less oversight, so they can more easily hide dirty money.
Even if you get caught, the penalties are relatively minor.
Even before Trump's threat, Ottawa proposed larger financial penalties for companies that don't follow anti-money laundering laws. This after TD Bank was fined $3 billion by American authorities for failing to stop fentanyl traffickers from laundering millions of dollars through its U.S. branches.
Banks, other financial institutions, securities dealers, jewelers, gold dealers, casinos. It's a huge problem in the sense of it's so pervasive and there are so many ways to do it.
Michael Ecclestone helps businesses monitor suspicious financial activity. He says there are big gaps in how Canada deals with money laundering compared to the U.S.
A lack of resources and a lack of focus is the amount of prosecution.
Canada has pledged to launch a joint strike force with the U.S. to combat money laundering. The federal government has also promised to create a financial crimes agency to boost enforcement, but that's almost 3 years overdue. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
Fact. Canadian security services identified 350 organized crime rings operating within our border. 63 of these groups have international connections to China, Mexico, and other nations. Fact. In British Columbia, police recently discovered a super lab containing enough fentanyl and materials to kill 95 million people.
Less than 5 months after she walked away from court in Surrey with a sentence of 2 years probation.
Ms. Kane, is there anything you want to say?
Jessica Kane has surfaced in Ontario, where she's facing new charges in a January 19th robbery in Vaughan, north of Toronto.
We had the reports that a male had been robbed and taken by 2 suspects to a series of ATMs where he was forced to withdraw money at knife points.
By a female suspect, later identified as Kane. The man told police he'd been held against his will after meeting the pair while attempting to arrange a sexual encounter. The 32-year-old Vancouver escort is accused of armed robbery, forcible confinement, and 3 probation breaches, while 22-year-old Manon Khanna of Toronto is charged with armed robbery and forcible confinement.
It's frustrating, but also with our system, it wasn't surprising.
Ms. Kane, can I have a word with you? Excuse me?
Last year, Kane pleaded guilty to theft in BC, admitting to stealing just over $92,000 from 6 men. The victims vulnerable, said Crown, because they were highly intoxicated.
Ms. Kane, are we able to get a comment from you?
Kane was initially accused of drugging her clients and robbing them, along with a charge of manslaughter in connection with the death of Alex Sherry's brother, Dustin Lefebvre. But those charges were stayed.
A good friend of mine sent me a text and said, hey, take a look at this, she's back.
Police say Kane has been in the Toronto area for at least a few weeks.
In this circumstance, we know that Jessica was advertising her services on social media in order to seek clients for sexual services. Our biggest concern, obviously, is when someone's traveling right across the country, that there are going to be other victims.
Don't be afraid. Obviously, there's embarrassment, and from time to time, men will do this, and women. My message would be say something. At least they will recognize her from the news and know that this is not going to end well for you.
Kane and her co-accused remain in custody. York police say the escort is currently wanted in Alberta, where charges she drugged and robbed a man there were also stayed in 2023. Kristen Robinson, Global News.